You ever find yourself wrestling with a big abstract idea, like how the economy really works?
Hmm.
And you wish there was just a way to see it in action, to, feel its impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what we're diving into today, isn't it?
Exactly. We're exploring how literature, stories can actually shed light on complex things like economic inequality and financial crises.
Make them more relatable, more understandable.
Right. And we've got some fascinating sources lined up.
We do. Some analyses connecting literature and economics directly, but also, importantly, the literary works themselves, texts that really grapple with these economic forces.
So, our mission, if you will, for this deep dive is to uncover those key insights. How do stories show the human side of economic systems? Especially, when things go wrong, inequality,
Oh.
crises.
Hmm. How it impacts actual lives. Okay, so maybe before we jump into the novels and things, we should probably define our terms a bit.
Good idea. Like economic inequality. What are we really talking about there?
Well, it's more than just, some people having more money.
Right.
Joseph Stiglitz talks about it as these significant gaps, disparities in wealth and income within a society,
Okay.
and this unevenness, it leads to real divisions, socially as well as economically. Think about access to opportunities, healthcare, education, all that stuff.
Got it. And then financial crises. Those sound dramatic.
They often are. Think about what Reinhardt and Rogoff describe sharp, often sudden drops in the value of financial assets.
Like stocks crashing
Mhm.
or housing bubble bursting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just stay in the financial markets. It can trigger widespread instability. Businesses fail, people lose jobs, real hardship.
And I guess these two things, inequality and crises, they're not totally separate issues, are they?
Not at all. There's a strong connection. Research, like from Gupta and Clements, shows that actually high levels of inequality can make an economy sort of more fragile.
More likely to have a crisis.
Yeah, more susceptible. And then when a crisis does hit, it often makes the existing inequality even worse.
Oof, so the gap gets wider.
Precisely. The wealthy might recover faster or even benefit sometimes, while others fall further behind.
Okay, so we have these big economic concepts. How does something like a novel help us understand them? It feels quite different from economic reports, doesn't it?
It does, but that's the magic, right?
Yeah.
Literature has this incredible power. Scholars like Akdir and Barron point out that stories have been dealing with economic life for ages.
Since the Middle Ages, even.
Yeah. Think about tales of trade, lords and peasants, wealth, poverty. These narratives capture the lived experience behind the economic forces.
So it's not just background scenery. The economics actually shapes the plot and the characters.
Absolutely. It influences their ambitions, their choices, the social structures they live in, even their moral dilemmas. How does wealth or poverty change who you are? How does it structure society?
And I think I read about something called the economic novel. What's that specifically?
Right. Akdir and Barron talk about that. It's basically a genre where economic events or choices are really central to the story.
So the plot kind of hinges on money or business or something.
Often, yeah. Or the system itself is a driving force. And what's really interesting is how these novels often take a critical stance. They question economic development, asking about the ethical side, the social costs, the environmental impact.
That makes sense. When you think about conflicts in stories, so often it boils down to resources or power, which is often tied to economics.
Exactly. And it's rarely just about the money itself. It connects to deeper social, political, even moral questions. Akdir and Barron suggest that maybe by bridging literature and economics, we find a richer way to talk about crises and change.
A common language.
Kind of. One that speaks to our emotions as well as our intellects.
That really does reframe how you can approach reading, doesn't it? Okay, let's dive into some examples. First up, Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath.
Ah, yes. A classic example of literature showing the human cost of economic disaster. We're looking at that part where the tenant farmers are talking to the owner men.
Right, and the owners are trying to explain why the bank is kicking people off the land. The language is just stark.
It is. They describe the bank as this inhuman monster.
Breeds profits, eats the interest on money.
Yeah, completely detached from the farmer's suffering. They say something like, if the bank doesn't get its profit, it dies the way you die without air.
Wow. It paints this picture of an economic system that's just lost its humanity, hasn't it? All about the bottom line.
It's a powerful illustration of what we might call financialization, maybe, where the logic of finance takes over and can actually harm the real economy, the people. Crop failure leads to debt, and the bank's rigid rules offer no flexibility.
It really shows how the system itself can cause hardship in a crisis.
Definitely. Okay, next let's shift to Dickens. Hard Times, Industrial England.
Ah, Coketown. Even the name sounds bleak.
Dickens is a master of atmosphere, isn't he? He paints this picture of just endless machinery and tall chimneys.
The interminable serpents of smoke.
Exactly. Polluted rivers, dyed strange colors, the constant monotonous grind of the steam engines. It just feels oppressive.
You can almost taste the soot.
And this connects directly back to what Akhtir and Barron were saying about literature critiquing economic development. Dickens isn't just describing a place, he's showing the potential dark side.
The human and environmental cost of that industrial progress.
Right. The toll on people's well-being, the damage to the environment, all in the name of production and profit.
Okay, moving on. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. Now this one, parts of it are hard to forget.
Yeah, it's pretty visceral. The bit we're focusing on is the description of the meatpacking industry, the lack of sanitation.
It's horrifying, isn't it? Meat falling on the floor with sawdust and rat droppings.
And then just being shoveled back in. Meat stored in damp places, rats running over it. Sinclair really doesn't hold back.
It makes your stomach turn. Just a total disregard for safety, for health.
And it's a searing critique, isn't it, of unregulated industry driven purely by profit. Sinclair is showing the terrible consequences when there are no checks, no ethical considerations. The danger to workers, the danger to the public.
Oh, because profit was the only goal. Grim. Okay, a different kind of critique now. George Orwell, Animal Farm. We're looking at the moment the pigs start walking on two legs.
Such a powerful, symbolic moment.
Yeah, it really is.
The pigs, who started the revolution for equality, suddenly adopting the very posture of their human oppressors. It signifies this massive shift.
In the whole social and economic structure of the farm.
Exactly. They become the new elite. It's a literary way of showing how revolutionary ideals, maybe even egalitarian economic systems, can get corrupted.
And power and wealth end up concentrated again.
Right. Just like can happen in the real world, reflecting that tendency towards inequality, where the powerful often benefit most.
Okay, now for something completely different.
Yeah.
Scott Fitzgerald. The Great Gatsby.
Hmm.
The Roaring Twenties.
Yeah, a total shift in scene. Unbelievable wealth, excess. We're looking at one of Gatsby's parties through Nick's eyes.
All those superficial chats people Nick doesn't even know. Mr. Mumble.
Ah, right. And that anecdote about the woman who tears her expensive dress?
And Gatsby just buys her a new one, sends it over from a fancy store.
Within a week. Just like that. It highlights this incredible, almost careless wealth, disposable income on a scale most people couldn't imagine.
It feels so detached, almost unreal.
And that reflects that booming, maybe speculative consumer culture of the era. Fitzgerald is subtly critiquing it, isn't he? Hinting at the emptiness, the potential moral decay behind all that glittering wealth and materialism.
Yeah, the dark side of the American dream, maybe.
Finally, a quick look at George Eliot's Middlemarch, Tertius Lydgate.
Right. Lydgate is interesting because his ambition isn't primarily economic.
He wants to be a great doctor, do research.
Exactly. For the sake of knowledge itself, for intellectual curiosity, not mainly for money or status, though those might come. So it's a contrast to characters driven purely by financial need or wanting to climb the social ladder.
Precisely. It's a reminder from literature that while economic forces are hugely powerful, they aren't the only things that motivate people. There's a whole spectrum of human desires and values beyond just the economic.
That adds another layer, doesn't it? It's amazing seeing how all these different books from different times tackle these economic ideas.
It really shows how embedded these issues are in human experience, how timeless they are.
And it underlines that idea we touched on earlier that literature and economic theories are kind of in conversation with each other.
The stories reflect the economic thinking and conditions of their time, but they also shape how we understand those things culturally.
So thinking about those big economic theories you mentioned, like classical, Keynesian,
Yeah.
how do they show up in these stories?
Well, you could sort of see reflections. Classical economics, free markets, individual effort. Maybe you see that in stories where characters succeed or fail based on their own grit in a system with few safety nets. Then Keynesian ideas, government stepping in during downturns, perhaps that resonates more with stories showing collective action or state responses to crises, like maybe aspects of the Grapes of Wrath's context, even if the book focuses on the failure.
Right. And what about newer ideas like behavioral economics?
Oh, that's fascinating too. Thinking about why characters make the economic choices they do. Literature's full of people making decisions that aren't purely rational in a financial sense. Right?
Totally. Driven by emotion or pride or anything but cold calculation.
Exactly.
Mm.
Behavioral economics tries to understand those psychological factors. So literature, in a way, provides all these rich case studies of economic behavior long before the economists formalized it.
So the authors were like early observers of economic psychology.
In a sense, yes, they provide this incredibly nuanced look at the human consequences, the lived experience of different economic systems and ideas, something charts and graphs can't always capture.
This has been really illuminating. It really makes you appreciate that literature is so much more than just entertainment. It's a lens, a powerful way to understand these huge economic forces through their human impact.
It really is. It's both that mirror reflecting reality and, as Actier and Barron suggested, a critical voice prompting us to question the systems themselves.
So maybe something for you listening to think about. Consider your favorite books or stories. Are there economic currents running beneath the surface?
What do they reveal about wealth, poverty, inequality, and just the human condition?
And how do those fictional worlds stack up against the economic realities we face today? Definitely some food for thought there.